I am a royalist. I am for them. Who else would do the job they do?
I think the Queen does a very good job, head of state. The question is, if you didn't have royalty as a head of state, who would you have? Elected president? I think maybe the Queen is better than that.
I think it's good. I think it is good. I know a lot of countries have presidential people instead of an actual royal family, but it's part of the heritage of the country, and nothing ever happens until the Queen gives her final decision.
I like them. I think it's good to have a public figurehead, and they're good for tourism, and I don't know, a bit cute, I suppose.
Personally, I think it's very strong. I think it's a very good institution. I think it gives a sense of cohesion to the country.
There is a certain need amongst people and societies to have people who symbolically represent them. So you could say that the British people would feel bereft, or many would feel bereft, if they didn't have a monarchy.
Because they are so ingrained in our culture, and they're patriotic and they're historic, which I think are quite British principles in themselves.
As our Queen is a figurehead, so we look to her as our identity, our nationality. It's what we are. You know, the Queen is what we are as a nation.
The development of constitutional monarchy in Britain as being part of the working out of a tension between the monarch and initially his or her nobles. And out of that tension, various rights that we have come to treasure, like not being imprisoned without trial, habeas corpus, like being able to have your interests represented in something we call Parliament. All those rights that we treasure as part of, if you like, the constitutional protections which we have come to be developed. So if we look at this tension, the first great moment in the working out of this tension is the signing of Magna Carta in 1215.
I think in fact you can look at pretty well the whole history of the monarchy here and see a movement, sometimes gradual and sometimes quite fast, coming away from being a more absolute form to being the constitutional form. If you want to find a particular point, it's probably the 17th century when we had our Civil War. Briefly we became a republic, and though we returned to being a monarchy then, it was a monarchy that never even sought to exercise the sorts of powers that had been implicit and explicit in it beforehand.
By the time that Queen Victoria, who's behind us, is on the throne, the monarch is primarily what we would call a constitutional monarch. And although she does have very considerable authority, and the longer a monarch reigns, the more they come to know the world and the world of politics better than their prime ministers.
19th century, you begin to see people worrying about the fragility of the monarchy, the notion that it's really quite hard to justify, and you have to keep it, as they said, as a bird in a gilded cage. By the time you get into the 20th century, and particularly the latter part of the 20th century, the feeling was that didn't hold true anymore, that the only way the monarchy could actually survive would be by becoming much more normal.
So the monarchy, in a sense, has come to evolve and change its rationalization as its position in the state has changed. The crown has moved, say, from the beginning of the 17th century, from a position where the king was king by divine right, and you have to think of all the ways in which Shakespeare talked about kingship. That's all there. To no one believes that the Queen is queen by divine right.
The Queen has been there for 60 years, has infinitely more experience of government than any of the prime ministers or ministers who come before her.
The Queen is a ceremonial queen, essentially, and theoretically speaking, any Act of Parliament doesn't get through unless the Queen gives it assent. The chances of the Queen not giving assent are practically zero, but I can't think there's ever been a time when the Queen hasn't given assent to an Act of Parliament.
You ask me what role does the royal family have in the government of the country today? And the answer is virtually nil. The Queen, as I said, is head of state. She opens Parliament and she mouths, for the benefit of the Prime Minister, what his government is going to do. Nevertheless, she is in a position privately to advise and to warn the Prime Minister, which she does on a regular basis. And frankly, that is that.
In one sense, the monarch is incredibly important because the monarch is the person, the office, the institution from which so much legitimacy of what happens comes.
Prince Charles is known for writing regularly to ministers and telling them you really ought to be doing that, or I disapprove of that. And that worries a lot of people because he's actually going beyond what is expected of constitutional monarchy.
I don't think that whoever's sitting on that throne, I don't think that they would actually conceivably try to exercise anything that we would recognise as sort of real political power.
So their power is more social, not political in any sense, it is social. And it comes from the huge role that they play in society.
And I think even though the Queen doesn't play, specifically the Queen doesn't play a very significant part in government, she is still seen as head of state. And not only do people come here to see her, people go abroad in their droves to see her as well.
To a certain extent they do live off our money, but they also do contribute, and the amount of tourism they bring to the country kind of overrides the fact that they might use a section of the money that we contribute.
Even for somebody like me who's a die-hard Republican, it would be very, very churlish to start divvying up and saying they don't pay their way. I think they probably do, actually.
You know, on the one hand, I think it's very difficult to actually quantify the royal impact on tourism. I mean, there are figures suggesting what it might be, but I think it's still it's a rather questionable thing to do. I don't think that one can say one way or the other really if they went whether tourists would go or not. Undoubtedly royalty and the way we trade on heritage in this country does play a huge role in sort of attracting tourists. Whether they would actually stop coming if we ceased having a royal family is another matter.
If you're talking about us having no royal family from today onwards and people coming here because of the history, yes, I think that would probably work for about 10 years. But I think it's the immediacy of the royal family. The fact that if you go to Buckingham Palace, she might pop out and give you a wave. Yeah, I think there would be tourism for about 10 years, and then I think it would wane slightly because you'd be constantly saying, and this is where the Queen used to live, and this is where this used to happen. Because what you have now is you have a presence and a past, and the connection between the two.
You know, there wouldn't be any point in having changing of guards in Buckingham Palace or in Windsor if you didn't have a royal family that lived there. So I think it's a bit of a plus.
If the main justification for having a monarchy is their tourist benefit, then I think that does really make it very questionable. You know, if you can't find it, if there are no other better reasons for having it, then I think we would really have to look at why we have one.
I think it's quite a common misconception that the royal family are living off taxpayers and everything like that, because the Queen actually pays income tax herself.
Well, they have to get paid from somewhere, and they don't live off people, as someone might say, because they work. They have a very, very hard job. Prince Charles is absolutely extraordinary in the amount of work he does. He's a great character as well. He's really funny and interesting, and works all the time. The Queen has never stopped working since she was probably 9 years old. And they deserve every single penny, and I think a lot of people would agree. Should get more.
Obviously, when you become to some degree dependent on Parliament for your income, in a sense the balance of power shifts. But I think it's very important to note that that income is only to be used by the monarch and her family in pursuing their public duties. It's not for their private pleasure or duties at all. It's for their public role. And one thing that's always important to remember about monarchy and about any form of authority is that it depends upon what the people are prepared to give to that person.
The fact is that the main members of the royal family are heavily subsidised by the public, and the payoff there is not so much what they give in terms of government, which is, you say, is very little, but it is what they give to the country in other ways.
A lot of negativity is towards the royal family, but I think they do actually contribute quite a lot, and I think they actually bring quite a lot of lightness and joviality to every day, because they're just quite a nice family, really. I mean, I know, and actually what I find appealing about them is that they are an ordinary family, but they're in this situation that isn't ordinary at all.
They're all very human people, just like you and me. They tend to have a highly developed sense for bullshit when it's coming their way, and they can have a very wicked sense of humour.
Being someone interested in history and an art historian, I have an immense gratitude for the past royal families and for the shape of various collections, for the patronage that's been given to buildings and all sorts of things. But I do feel very strongly that the current royal family is a bit of an anachronism, just the same as having a peerage is an anachronism, giving people honours is an anachronism. We're meant to live in a meritocracy, and I can't quite see how you can square up a meritocracy with a very, very privileged royal family.
I think it's an institution and it's a system with huge numbers of faults and problems and things like that, but I think given the historical context and the social context and the level of popular support, I think it is the right one for here and will continue to be.
All I do is win, 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 no matter what. Got money on my mind, I can never get enough. And every time I step up in the building, everybody hands go up. And they stay there.